All right, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to have a lesson in microeconomics or economics. And today's lesson is entitled Basic Terminology in Microeconomics. Now, for most of you, you haven't spent a great deal of time talking about economic theory or any of the concepts related to economics or microeconomics. So this lesson might be a little bit of a challenge for you. I'm going to try and go as slow and be as clear as possible. And at the same time, I would recommend that as you watch the video, from time to time you pause it and go ahead and take notes for yourself, because these are going to be the base concepts that we are going to need to have our greater discussions about the economics of the different energy sources that we are dealing with. So starting from this first page, what do I got here? All right, be patient with me for a second. I'm not used to the new Outlook yet. Bam. All right. First of all, let's start with this. Microeconomics. When we talk about microeconomics, what we're really talking about is business. Business and how markets are influenced by businesses and by world events and by what the public thinks. So that's what we're going to start. So today, you guys are going to need to start thinking like business owners. I'm going to start with a simple question, and that is, what is cost? Now, for most of us, what is cost is a pretty simple question. And if I asked an average class, what is cost, I'd get an answer like, it's the amount of money that I need to spend to purchase an item. And from a consumer standpoint, it's a pretty cut and dry issue. The cost of something is the amount of money that you would spend to gain that product. However, as I said, we are going to be focusing our attention from the standpoint of a business owner, which makes it way more complex. So we're going to start our lesson today with the different types of costs that an owner, a business owner, would have to take into account when they run their business. First off, we're going to talk about initial cost versus opportunity cost. Now, initial cost is the amount of money that it takes to start a business. Okay, aside from the daily operating costs, which we're going to get to in a second, the initial cost is the amount of money you would have to spend up front to get your business going. Now, these initial costs include things like a building, whether you're going to rent or buy your own building, or nowadays, any of our online businesses have to buy a website or a domain name or whatever it is. That would also include your workforce, whoever it is you're going to employ to work for your business. And that would include the machines, whatever machines you are going to need in order to run your business. Now, this workforce and the machines we categorize together, and we call these things capital. Okay, that's a term I'm going to expect that you understand. Capital, which really, when we define capital, just means anything that helps produce a good or service. Produce a good or service. And when we talk about capital, there's two types of capital, as you might be able to see clearly from our two examples here. There's human capital, and there's physical capital. So human capital, meaning your workforce, anybody who works for you, your labor, your physical capital being any of the machinery or any of the items that you have at your shop. or whatever your business is that is not a human that will help you produce whatever good or service you produce. Now, the other thing that a business owner will have to understand is the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost, when you talk about opportunity cost simply means the cost of the next best option. Or in other words, what you could do with the money. So let's say you have $1 million, okay, and you're looking at building a business or starting a business. If you know that you have a business idea that's going to cost you $1 million, whatever you could do with that $1 million, if you didn't make that business, that's your opportunity cost. Okay, so in some ways there are extremely high opportunity costs. So let's say you had some money, you were going to start a business, and you had some options. Okay, let's say you really had your heart set on making a sporting good business in the Fox cities, and you know it's going to cost you $500,000, and you figure that if you didn't do that, you could maybe open up a giant bookstore chain. And you looked at the market, and at that time, there was way more money being made by books and bookstores than by sporting goods stores, just theoretically saying. If they both cost the same, you have a really high opportunity cost if you choose to go with the sporting goods store, because the next best thing you could have done with that money might have been a better option. On the other hand, you also could have just taken that $500,000 and put it in the lottery. Now, if you don't win, you don't. So there's no guarantee in the lottery, because if you don't win, you don't get anything. So in that instance, there's a very low opportunity cost, okay, because your next best option isn't a very good one. Okay, so those are the two things when a business owner is considering whether or not he or she should start their business. Those are the two costs they need to consider. How much is it going to cost me just to get the business going? And then also, if I choose not to do this business, what else could I do with my money? What's my next best option? All right. Let's say you look at your initial and operating costs and you decide, I'm going to make my business. Now you have to also consider your month-to-month costs. You need to look at what's called the operating costs, or the cost of operation. Because as you probably know, a business can function very much like running a household. If you went to your parents and you looked at their bills, they'd have a rent bill, they'd have cable, they'd have the energy bill, water bill, internet, all kinds of different bills. And a business is no different, because especially for a brick and mortar business or a non-website business that actually has a building, they have to pay for these types of things. And we change these up we subcategorize these operating costs into two types: fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed cost is the cost that stays the same from month to month. No matter how much you produce or how much you use, it stays the same month to month. I would equate this to like a cable bill. Most people pay the same amount on their cable bill each month. Now, next month, you could watch 800 hours of TV. Just for instance, actually, I don't even know if that's possible, but let's say you watch a couple hundred hours of TV. And the month after, you only watch 10 hours of TV. No matter how much TV you watch, your cable bill will still be the same. So in a business, let's say that's like their rent. Okay, regardless of how much they produce, their rent is going to stay the same. Their insurance is probably going to stay the same. Those are costs that they can count on being the exact same each month. The variable costs are going to be the costs that vary with usage. Okay, I would look at these as being more relatable to like an energy bill or a water bill. If you use a lot of energy in your house, let's say it's summer and it's hot like it's been this summer, and you're using your air conditioning and you use energy, that bill is going to go up. So it went up with the usage. Or let's say your water bill, the more water you use, it's going to go up with usage. Okay? Now, this is where we're going to start getting into equations because economics is a mathematics-based study. And so for these two, whenever we have an equation, we give them letters. So this is FC, and this is going to be VC. And when we add those together, we come up with a formula for total cost. Okay, so we have fixed costs. If you add fixed cost and variable costs together, you will get the total monthly cost, and that's monetary. Monetary meaning money. So if you take the amount of cost that stays the same each month, add it to the amount of cost that varies each month, you will get the monthly total cost for a business. Now, there's also a discussion in economics about an all-inclusive total cost. And what that means is the total cost including the impact on the environment and resources. Concern about the environment is definitely becoming more and more prevalent nowadays in terms of looking at businesses and trying to see how we can have the lowest amount of impact on the environment that we can. And this is really where this idea came from, is that we have a total cost that not only looks at, okay, this is how much money it's going to cost us, but also by producing this way, this is the impact, this is the cost that it'll have on the environment, and this is the impact that we'll have. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, or indifferently, many businesses don't even consider the all-inclusive total cost. It's more of a theoretical discussion that is had by environmentalists, policymakers, politicians, things of that nature. So when it comes down to the economics, we really don't include this. One, because most of our business owners are concerned more with the bottom line of making money. And second of all, because it's really a non-quantifiable issue. Whereas the total cost, you can put a price on, you can put it into an equation. You really can't quantify the impact on the environment and resources. Okay, the next term we're going to talk about is revenue. Now, when you hear the word revenue, I want you to think it's the amount of money that is brought in by the selling of the product or service. So it's amount of money brought in by the selling of a good or service. All right, this is another one that we're going to be getting into our equations, and the symbol for this equation is going to be R, and the equation that matters most in terms of revenue is going to be Q times P equals R. Q, meaning the quantity, Q is the quantity that is produced, or the quantity that is sold, times the price that it is sold at, and that'll equal the revenue. So if you look at it in terms of, say, iPods, if we were selling iPods out of our truck, and we had 100 iPods, and we sold all of them for $200 a piece, our revenue would be $2,000. Yep, $20,000. There's my math skills. Great. $20,000. Okay, so our revenue would be $20,000. The amount of money that we brought in by selling of a good or service. So the good we sold was the iPods. If we sold 100 iPods at $200 a piece, we'd get $20,000 of revenue. Now the big P word, profit. Okay, this is what all businesses need to know. Am I making a profit? The profit is really it's the amount of money made by the business. The amount of money made by the business. Now you may be asking yourself, didn't we just discuss that with the revenue? The revenue is just the total amount of money you made. However, as we've already gone over, it costs money to make those products each month. So if you're not bringing in more money than it costs to make those products, you are not making a profit. You really haven't made anything. Look at it this way. If you were going to make birdhouses and sell birdhouses out of your garage, and you're going to charge $20 a birdhouse, but yet it costs you $30 to make that birdhouse, you're really losing $10 every time you sell a birdhouse. So it's really important to not only understand the revenue, but really grab a greater understanding of how much you're making by looking at the profit. The profit is just going to be written out. Okay, so we'll have, when we look at profit, we look at the revenue minus the total cost equals the profit. Okay. Now we're going to get down and dirty, and this is where the math really comes in, and this is where we are going to apply all the knowledge. Now, whenever you are going to ponder over a microeconomics question, I want you to be able to draw this matrix. Now, you're not going to necessarily draw this bottom row right here. I've just included that so you understand what each one of these means. I want you to think of that when you see this matrix. So you have your quantity, your price, your fixed cost, your variable cost, your total cost, your revenue, and your profit. Now this is about as basic as an economic matrix gets. Depending on how far we get in your studies of economics, we might have 30 different concepts in this matrix. But for now, in our discussion of energy, this is all we really need to have a discussion. So let's do some practice with this. Question 1. Jimmy owns a crab shack by the beach. Each month, he has a fixed cost of $350. If Jimmy's total cost is $800, how much does Jimmy pay in variable cost? Okay, so let's take a look at this. So we know that Jimmy's fixed cost is $350. And we know that Jimmy's total cost is $800. And we can figure out by saying $350 then plus X, because we see that total cost is just fixed cost plus variable cost. So 350 plus X equals 800. Or what we can say is 800 minus 350 equals X. So by looking at that, we can tell, or we can determine that his variable cost is $450. All right. Oop. All right, let's get that out of there. Okay, so the answer to the first question, $450. Question number 2. At Jimmy's Crab Shack, Jimmy sells crabs at the market price of 5 crabs for $1. Okay, so let's write that down right away. He sells market price 5 crabs for $1. So 5 crabs cost $1. So if we divide 5 divided by 1, that'll give us the market price, which will be 0.2. Okay, so it's 20 cents per clam, or per crab rather. Last month, Jimmy sold 425 crabs. Did Jimmy make a profit last month? All right, so we know what we want to find. So we 4250. Okay, so if he sold 4,250 crabs at 0.2 per crab, we need to figure out first what the revenue is. Okay, because if we're looking at this, we have profit. We know what the total cost is. The total cost, so right now it's R minus 800. So if we can find, in order to find profit, we need to take R, which is revenue, minus 800. And by looking at our equation for R, we know that what it's really saying is Q times P minus 800. And we have Q and we have P, so we know that what it's really saying is 4,250 times 0.2 minus 800. And if we do that calculation, we will figure out that 4,250 times 0.2 equals 850 minus 800 equals 50. So our profit is $50. So Jimmy made $50 last month. What is the minimum number of crabs that Jimmy could sell and still stay in business? Okay, so really what we're asking, really what this question is asking is how many crabs would Jimmy have to sell in order for his profit to equal 800? In order to stay in business, Jimmy would have to sell enough crabs to at least be able to make his total cost for the month, which is $800. So the question is really asking, how many crabs would Jimmy have to sell to make $800? So that one's pretty easy. So Q times 0.2 equals 800. Or Q equals 800 divided by 0.2. So 800 divided by 0.2 is 4,000. So how many would he have to sell in order to stay in business? 8,000. If Jimmy sells less than that amount, what options does Jimmy have to try and keep his business? Now this is where we really transition into our next lesson. Because it would seem as though if you were Jimmy, you would need to do a couple things. You would either need to increase the quantity that you sell, but by increasing the quantity that you sell, you also increase the variable cost, unless you either change the amount of capital that you use or change the quality of your production. So that's not a very good option. While we could change the variable cost, and the only way to really change the variable cost is either by getting rid of machinery and hiring more people, or by firing people and doing more of the work yourself. Well, that may or may not be a possibility. You may say, well, I'm just going to raise the price. Jimmy could just raise the price from 20 cents a crab to 50 cents a crab, which if Jimmy is one of the only crab shops in an area of the country that loves crabs, that might be a good option. But if either more crab shops are open in that area, or the people don't love crab that much, that will not work. And that's really where we get into our next discussion, which is going to be on supply and demand. So for the time being, if any of this is confusing to you still, please come and talk to me. I'd be happy to watch the video with you and go over this video again with you to kind of confirm or rather help you comprehend some of these concepts. I know they're going to be new for most of us. And otherwise, go back to the website. I have a couple practice activities for you that are very similar to this practice activity that we just did. And then submit those to me. And I look forward to some very fruitful discussion on Thursday or Friday this week in regards to these basic concepts of cost, profit, and revenue. All right. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you later.